All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Happy Sunday, everybody, and welcome to the Bronx Learning Lounge, our Sunday series Educators Brunch. We are very happy to have all of you here today, and I'm happy to be sharing this platform today with my co-host, Rosa Vasquez of Collaborative Conscious. We got together at the start of this year. Rosa hosts school, family, and community hubs, and I've been hosting these brunches since 2019. And we just talked about ways that we can partner. And so given these times, we thought it was really important to talk to people who are on the ground doing the work to support special populations. I'll give you a real quick synopsis of my background, let Rosa introduce herself, and then tell you who our featured speakers are for today. I started off as a special education teacher in Hunts Point a few years ago, and I worked with populations who had year-round schooling. So we were in school through pretty much the first part of August. And since then, I have continued to work with schools and communities in the Bronx. I live in the Bronx. I'm a Bronx college graduate. I've been here for most of my adult life. Wasn't born here. I was born in Mount Vernon. But the Bronx and Mount Vernon are very near and dear to me. I started the Bronx Learning Lounge for that purpose, to create a space for educators in those communities to come together like we are today to share the resources that all of us have and share, because it's very needed for the communities that we serve. Rosa, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everybody. Thank you all so much for coming on this Sunday morning. And thank you, Constance, for joining me and collaborating and creating this much needed space, especially for our special populations. So I have a side organization called Collaborative Conscious. I'm an educator. I'm a special education provider. I also am a parent as well. And I also was born and raised in the Bronx, reside in Queens. So I love the idea of collaborating, creatives and communities, and those that want to do well and reshape communities. And I just hated the idea that growing up, I saw that there was a disconnect between, and these barriers between schools, families, and communities. So I found this purpose and this calling to create the School, Family, and Community Partnership Hubs, which is part of Collaborative Conscious, is a conscious circle that I created. So I'm glad that we was able to join together and join other entrepreneurs, educators, creatives that want to do something for ourselves, be sufficient in bringing that modern day version of It Takes a Village. So I thank you all for coming and joining in with us.
Thanks, Rosa. All right, so today I'm going to go through really quickly what we're going to do.
Internet's lagging a bit. Okay, give me
it is just a little.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Can you hear me, Rosa?
Yes, sorry, my internet is laggy this morning. Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay, I hear you.
Okay. So, really quickly, what we're going to do today, we're going to have brunch. Marlena has her brunch. If anybody else has their brunch, feel free to enjoy while we have our talk. What the Bronx Learning Lounge seeks to do is host spaces for educators to get together over brunch and share tangible resources in the form of people support, as well as tangible resources that we can actually use in our everyday classrooms. So we started out in Motley Kitchen. We were fortunate to have DreamYard Project give us in-kind space, and then COVID struck. So we are not able to have our in-person meetings right now, so we've moved to a virtual platform. What we're going to do today, we have some dynamic folks here. I'm excited to have them with us to talk about what they've been doing. I'm going to introduce them. We're going to let them share some strategies. Rosa and I came up with some questions that they don't know yet, so we're excited to give those questions out to them. And then we'll open the dialogue for everyone who's in the room to just ask questions for anybody in the group the speakers, anybody who's in the room who has expertise in that area to share your thoughts, because this is specifically about the strategies that we can provide to families, school leaders, and communities to help during these times. At the end, we have a raffle, and I'll tell you what you get after the raffle, and then we'll just stay in the room for a little bit. If anybody wants to hang out, if you have questions for us, for each other, please do that at the end. If you have questions, if you could type them in the chat while we're going through the talk so we don't miss those. If we don't get to every question during the time that we have allotted, because we want to be respectful of people's time, we will share that out with the speakers and everyone else to give feedback in a collective way. All right? Okay, folks, without further ado, let's talk about these guests we have today. I'm excited. So I'm going to start. We have Darlene Jackson with us. Darlene is a parent member at Dream Family Action Council. She is a member of the Community Board 9, and she is running for City Council for District 18. Darlene and I have actually been in some common spaces together where I've been like, wait, is that Darlene? Okay. So like minds tend to end up together, and I'm excited about that. We have Paula McMillan Perez. Am I saying that right? I hope so. Paula is a Bronx native. Okay, and she is a licensed social worker. She has been working with social justice, juvenile justice, and just, I think, observing what she saw over the years. She founded Personalizing Your Coaching, which is a personalized coaching to help communities of color, because we often don't get that support that we need to deal with circumstances like these. And then we have a tribe from the Mott Haven community, from the Mott Haven Charter Academy. We have Gabriella McBride. She's also a licensed social worker. We have Lauren Katzenstein, and I hope I'm pronouncing everybody's name correctly, who's also a social worker. And we have Alessandra Jacquith, who is our E&L coordinator at Mott Haven. So they bring to the table their expertise, specifically working with transient student populations, special education background, students in foster care. So it's really important to hear from them today. And we also have, I believe we have one more person, Monique. I think Monique is somewhere in the room. Monique Farrington. Monique, is that you? Okay, so Monique Farrington is also a member of the Community Board 9. She's the Vice Chair for Youth and Education, and she's a Community Ambassador for the Hunts Point Community Partnership Program. She has been working diligently to make sure that families in the Hunts Point and Longwood area have access to the internet, to Chromebooks, to keep learning going. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We are happy to have all of you here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So like I said, Rose and I came up with some questions that we have not shared yet, but I promise the speakers, it won't be anything that you're going to go, what in the world is she talking about? So if you will, I think we'll do it this way. Let's keep the collective group of Mott Haven folks together. And then Darlene, Paula, and Monique, if you want to chime in as well. So this question is for the whole group. So from all of your respective positions, what has been your greatest concern with supporting these populations? And we're talking about students with English language needs, special education needs, and students who are transient, either homeless or in foster care. And how are you working with school leaders and educators to address those concerns? So let's start with the folks in Mott Haven. If you want to give us maybe 2 minutes or less, anybody can take the question and tell us how you're doing that. Feel free to unmute yourselves. And
I could go. Hi guys, my name is Lauren. Again, I'm a social worker at Haven. And to answer that question, I would say the main focus right now is making sure that families and scholars have access to resources that they need. And that's anything from access to internet, access to computers, access to adequate food, access to mental health services, access to services for both the child and the parent. And anything along those lines, making sure that before we can even go into focusing on the academics, making sure they have those essential resources to be able to work to the best of their abilities and be safe, right? So safety and like overall well-being would be our main concern at that time.
Hi.
And then to think, go ahead.
Sorry, go for it, Lauren.
Just to think a little bit more, right, about, I know you said not just what our concern is, but ways that we're able to provide that. So we make sure that we stay in very close communication with both our kids and our families by providing individual counseling for scholars, by providing mental health services also for families, offering support groups to parents twice a week where they can come in, get access to resources, learn about different mental health strategies and coping skills that they can use during this time, and really just be a support for each other, which we found has been really a great takeaway from this whole experience, just the sense of community and the sense of people coming together and saying, this is hard, but I'm here for you, right? And this is something that I found, and this is something I want to share with you. So being able to give people that space to share that wealth of knowledge has been really, really useful for us.
Thank you. You said something interesting. You said come in. So I'm curious to know, are you actually providing a space?
Virtually.
Okay.
Virtually. But we do, once a week, we offer food pickup at the school.
Mm-hmm.
So we provide meals to about 120 people, 60 families, every Thursday. And that's homemade meals by our chef. So during that time, we're able to provide them with meals and also just get to see them, see a quick check-in, which has been really, really nice.
Awesome. Thank you. Darlene and Monique, you want to tackle that?
How you guys
Feel
doing?
free to unmute yourselves.
Hello? So let me see. So I have different ways of, I'm wearing different hats during this. So one, as a parent, he just turned 17 actually. And so I'm going through the process as a parent, of how, it's so funny because if they're not used to of having that independence in the school or that structure of working independently, he is struggling right now of having of being disciplined and creating a structure of actually doing the actual remote learning. But I think that what's helping for me, thank goodness, is the fact that I have a partnership with my son's school. And so they like check in with him very constantly to see how they know exactly when he's engaged. And so that's one, as a parent, of getting that support from my adolescent. But then I'm also part of the Dream Family Action Council, where we provided that support for actual parents. I'm lucky enough, I only have one child. There's parents that have multiple children from different age groups that bless their souls. I have no idea how they superpowers on of how they making it happen. But a lot of families, they struggling, and so our job is to kind of provide like a self-care platform. So at least 1 hour throughout, at least bi-weekly, to kind of check in to see how parents are doing with their children, more on the mental health piece specifically for parents. And then the fact that I'm also a public member at my local community board, and so in that capacity, and then also for running for office, is trying to mitigate the district needs in my community. And so the people on the front lines, as far as who's providing services for young people and families, are nonprofit organizations, the service providers, the people who has actually provided the mental health aspect. Because at the end of the day, we have the school administration that has to teach, right? And so that they had to outsource that service to provide something and deal with all the society's issues and the issues that's going on in the home. And so I'm working with service providers to see, what are their needs based on services from the families that's struggling during this time. And the biggest thing, in all honesty, is isolation.
Yeah.
It's that being used to being isolated, and is that Mr. Do I see Mr. Taylor? Hi, Mr. Taylor.
Hi, how are you?
I just happened to look to my right and I saw a familiar face. That's one of my son's dean of school culture, right?
Academics, but same thing.
Yeah.
Small world.
So to end it is the most challenging is listening to the nonprofits that's on the front lines, because if listening to their stories, like as far as the elected officials in the Bronx, they're very isolated when it comes to the issues that's happening on the front line. So they kind of struggling because their voice is not being heard, and so me coming in and kind of mitigating the needs is kind of bringing the issues to light again to me. Okay, that's why I'm ending right there.
And Darlene, I just want to add something to that because I think you raised a point that's really important. Sometimes there's a disconnect, right, between what the school leaders have to do every day, and I'm speaking from the perspective, and LaShawna can give some insight to that, and anybody else who, Brandon as well, who's been a school leader. Sometimes we are so focused on what we have to do as leaders that we don't necessarily, unless you have that background, especially at ELL, understand what those populations really need. So it's really important at this time and all the time for me to have folks who can say, let me just talk to you for 5 minutes in this safe space and help you understand what they really need and give some suggestions to you about how maybe you can't put it on your agenda and you do it, but we can work together to do that. And I think that's so important for any school moving forward at any time to have those collaborations, and those wraparound services available, because sometimes in school, you just don't know that there's somebody like Paula who's right down the street from you that has this coaching that you can be like, oh, I have about 5 families who need this support. Right. And so it's really important, Darlene, the work that you're doing and the work that others are doing to provide that community support. Monique, did you want to also share?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Ambassador for Hunts Point Community Partnership. And I'm being in a community-based organization. So we're working from home, we're working remotely. We usually do events for the community. We're trying to empower our Hunts Point Longwood families. But since we cannot do it in person by doing events, we're doing it remotely. We have 4 community ambassadors, and so reaching our families for finding out what they need. We've been giving out Chromebooks to families. We've been checking on our families calling in. We have 4 ambassadors each day. We find out family needs. Every week we have a call-in where they get boxes, they get resources. We do an online tutoring. We have different incentives where they can receive food, gift cards, Amazon gift cards, different incentives. So I'm checking up on them. We have a COVID-19 resource kit, helping with unemployment, with food stamps, with housing situations, giving them resources. Finding out what for the shelters, so they can call in and get all kind of resources. We finding out. I'm also on the board of directors for Metro Community Health Centers, which helps with special needs of the elderly. We have the telehealth program where if they can't to the doctors, they can, register and be through their laptops, help the special needs populations. So we have like everything that anybody needs in this community. We find out what they need, we get answers to, we check up on. If they have like English language, they can call us, we will find answers to them. We're to reach these families that are not coming out. Because once we reach one family, we tell them spread the reach. And we have so many families that we were not able to even reach before calling us. I've had families from Brooklyn that all of a sudden we have teachers put our information on their Google walls, and people are calling us. We have been giving out 100 subscriptions to BBC Mouse to these families. We're reaching a lot of the communities during time. Help them to empower themselves during this time. Food pantries, we some ambassadors who are having their own food pantries, and we're sharing it, which empower them. We're trying to reach everybody because we're all on the same field at this time. So that's what we've been doing.
Thank you. And so one thing that I heard everybody say, which I think is really important in this Zoom age, I heard everybody say we're calling or we have a call for parents. And that was one of the things when I was teaching or leading special education, you have to exhaust your resources, right? When you're scheduling an IEP meeting, how many ways have you tried to reach out to the parents? And it can't just be, well, I sent them this email. We know people don't read email, right? So how did you reach out to the parents? And I think the fact that everybody is just really keeping it old school, right? Like we're on the phone. People have phones. We know that people have access to phones of some sort. So we are calling people on the phone. I think that's huge and necessary in these times, especially. Paula, did you want to share some insight as well?
Some of what I've been doing is a lot of like parent coaching around like what are some of these things, looking like how are we able to like engage and what are the questions that we need to be asking of our classroom teachers, of our leadership members, in terms of like what are the expectations for distance learning, because some parents are feeling overwhelmed with what their child has to produce in addition to like what they have to do like at home, like working from home and working remotely. So like how to engage in those conversations, like what are some of the things you need. Some of the parents I work with, they don't have a physical copy of their child's IEP. They never received it after the meeting. They're not sure who they can ask for it. So like kind of outlining those things and those steps, and what are some of the ways that you understand how the services are being provided to your children in this distance learning setting, so that they could have clarity on that and what's the expectation for them as a parent, as well as what's the expectation for their student. Also, some of the platforms that schools are using are very unfamiliar to parents in terms of like, how do I access it? Sometimes, depending on the way it was structured in school, I'll use Google Classroom as an example, some students may have used it, some students may not have used it. So they're all trying to figure it out at once. So I did a few Zoom sessions with parents of what like their children's screen looks like. How are the kids checking their email because they get email alerts from Google Classroom? Are they using their calendar? Are there Zoom sessions plugged in there if they're having live sessions? So they literally learn a little bit about how to access those things. And some parents were saying it was overwhelming, you know, with all the screen time. So one of the things I was actually thinking about doing moving forward was creating some videos, maybe something on Loom or on YouTube that parents can access and then reach out with questions. And because I think the live practice time helps, because sometimes in the moment you tend to feel frustrated when you're trying to help your child, and then you're trying to help them with the academic pieces that you might not 100% be comfortable with, and then that adds to some of the frustration you're feeling. So try to reduce some of that, and then kind of help the kids that I work with doing some executive functioning coaching with how do you plan your schedule for the day? What is realistic for you? And sometimes the expectations for some students differ from others that are in your own home. So what does that look like? So things like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Rosa?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm just making sure I get everybody's, some amazing people in the chat are sharing questions. I'm just putting them on the side, and we'll get to them after we do our little short Q&A with the speakers. And any of the strategies, if you have any, feel free as the audience members to put them down, because it does take a village, and anything that comes up, like, oh wait, I remember this is happening right now, put them in the chat box and we'll share them. So I have my questions to Ali, Paula, and Darlene. So this question is, for most of us in the Bronx, our students' parents are essential workers with English as a second language or non-English speakers, MLL. What is a specific strategy to help support these families to keep learning ongoing? So if you want Ali to start, and then we'll go to Paula and Darlene.
Sure. First, thank you so much for having us. I think something that came up in hearing what everybody was sharing about, I heard the word isolation, and what I, specifically coming from an ENL lens, I'm thinking about language isolation. And to your point, many of our MLL students have parents who are essential workers and perhaps are at home by themselves or with their older sibling all day and completing their tasks on a screen all day, and don't necessarily have authentic opportunities to
Did we lose Allie? I feel like her screen froze.